The description of your podcast is the most powerful part of your listing, your podcast listing, how it shows up in the player apps, Apple, Spotify, everywhere. It comes from your feed and it goes through to those player apps. So this is something that you control at your podcast hosting. So here at Podetize, we have a special exercise we use with all of our clients. And we highly recommend they do this to help develop a full-fledged, optimized description that uses the total character count you have available. Because if you don't use that character count, you're not serving yourself up to people who need you most, to the people who are out there searching you. You're shortchanging them by writing a short description. And this is the most underutilized section of the listing. We find professionals everywhere who don't practice this, professional producers, professional companies that are big networks, and they don't utilize this properly. It is not just for human beings. This is as much for the bots and probably more so than it is for human beings. However, the way that we do this description exercise does it so that it accomplishes both. So let's start with how we operate this description exercise and how we recommend that our clients use it. First things first, you're going to record it, which you're a podcast host, so this should be easy. Record it, because when you record something and you're using your voice, you're explaining it to someone possibly more in layperson's terms than you would if you wrote it. We tend to write more formally. And so if we really want this to work, we need to use our voice. We need to use it like we're talking to our audience. It's going to work better here. And especially in this day of bots and all kinds of things and AI that are conversational, that model is going to work better. So that's why we use our voice and we record it. Want to record about 10 to 15 minutes, somewhere in there, because that's going to give you enough to edit down to 4,000 characters. So that's our optimum time frame. We want to use 2/3 of that time period to answer the first section of questions, basically. And the question is, who's your ideal audience and how can they benefit from listening to your podcast? Like, what are they going to get from it? So we're really out there dialing in and talking directly to that audience. We're not doing it in a third person kind of model. We want to talk directly to them. So you're my ideal audience, right? You're a podcast host. You're my ideal audience for the binge factor. So what I would say is, the most difficult thing for podcast hosts is making sure that their show is discoverable. You can get amazing binge factor tips, or you can get amazing tips from bingeable podcasters who've been doing this for 100 episodes more. I'm sort of leading in. And so then I might talk about pain points. I might talk about ideal guests, the type of content we're talking about, but I'm dialing in and really talking to that ideal audience the whole time. And I'm referencing their pain points, their aspirations, and making sure that they understand that this podcast means that they're in the right place for all of that, for what they're going to get, for how they're going to benefit, how their life is going to be better. That's what we do in the first section. So you think about it as like talking to your ideal audience. What is the thing or the things that they can benefit most from by listening to your show? That's it. We're going to spend our majority of time on that. Then we want to spend about two minutes or so, 2 to 3 minutes maximum, talking about ourselves. Now, this time we want to talk about it in the third person, because when you write a description, it's written in a third person. It's not you saying that. So you want to do that piece in the third person. And you want to say, Tracy Hazard is and give a few things about you, about the ideal things that make you perfect fit for hosting this podcast. We don't want your whole resume there. We don't want all of your biography. We don't really even don't overdo your awards and recognitions unless they're absolutely relevant to why you're hosting this show, to what their benefit of you being the host is for this show, right? That's what we want to do. We want to make it absolutely relevant and relevantly tie in you as the host of the show, uniquely suited to bring them this great podcast. That's that middle piece that you're going to do. And then you want to spend the last few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes again, maybe up to 5, but where you're going to outline what they're going to get from you in the future. So if you haven't recorded this podcast yet, right? And you're not doing this in retrospect. So you're retrofitting your description, but you're forward pacing it for a new podcast that you're launching, then you go ahead and envision what the podcast is going to look like 25, 50, 100 episodes in. So as you listen to this podcast, you're going to get great tips about this. You're going to meet guests like that. You're going to do this, this, and this, right? And so you're giving them a sort of idea of what the experience of the podcast is going to be. A little bit different than the benefit for them. This one is about the what, right? What are they getting when they tune in and subscribe? And the same thing is if you've already recorded 100 episodes or more, and you've already been recording for your podcast for a while, and you're just retrofitting this description, you know what you've already covered. You know what your tips are. You know what your great topics are. You know what your great guests were. You know what your best ones were. List them out. But do more than just say, here's these guests. These guests talk about this, right? Give them an example. So go a little bit deeper in your description, especially if you've already recorded it. So that is the piece of getting the description out there. Now we have to turn it into a written 4,000 character description. So that's phase 2, the second part of what we do. Now, why don't we use some great AI tools while we're at it? So if you're going to do this yourself, keep in mind, if you're a done-for-you podcast production client, all you have to do is give us the recording. Stop here. Don't listen to any more of this tip. If you're going to do it yourself and you have to write your own description, then follow the rest of the directions here. So the rest of the directions are simply this. You can transcribe that audio. Utilize Zoom. Zoom has a transcription function already. Turn on your AI summary if you want. Turn on your AI companion in Zoom and ask it to rewrite it. See if it can help you with it. So there's already some tools for that out there. But if you don't have that, then transcribe it. Use a transcription system like rev.com or any transcription system out there. There's some free ones now. Google has one. Use the transcribe. And when you get your transcription, now take that transcription and copy it into Google Bard. I recommend Google Bard here versus ChatGPT because you can get Google Bard to write something that's more keyword blog-like in what it does. So you definitely want it to be more like that than you want it to be conversational. So use Google Bard. And if you've never used Google Bard, now's a great time to do it. It's bard.google.com. It's super easy to use. Go in, it's free. Put in that transcript, but put in a paragraph above it that says, create a 4,000 character podcast description from the following with the tone that you want. So let's say you want it to be energetic, and put it with the exact type of audience that you want. So that podcast hosts who are struggling to continue to produce their show, continue to publish, to stay activated and energized, like be clear about what you want them to do, will subscribe and listen to my show. And then you drop your transcript in, and then you hit enter and see what it does. Sometimes you need to go through a couple of iterations of it. Sometimes it doesn't quite do 4,000 characters. You might need to copy and paste it over into a Google Doc and make some edits yourself. What I do recommend is you maybe do like 3,500 characters and rewrite the opening paragraph for yourself. So I a lot of times let the AI do part of it. And then I go back. And what I do is once I see AI having done its sectioning and sort of like it'll talk about, because it'll follow your order. When it talks about that section that's about the audience and about why they are going to benefit from your show, and then it introduces you as the host of it, and then it's got what they can find, I take a great sentence from each section and I turn it into the opening and first paragraph. So that's another way that you could do it. So you can restructure it so it has a better leading paragraph. Or you can just ask the AI once you've got 4,000 characters going, saying, rewrite this with a more compelling opening 3 sentences or a most compelling paragraph at the beginning of it, and just ask it to rewrite it that way. So those are some ways that you could do it. But the way that we structure it, because we write it ourselves, we don't use AI for everything. We use AI for the transcription, but our team actually goes and takes the most compelling sentence you say about the audience and about what they are and create this like dynamic opening sentence. And then they take a sentence about you, the host, and they say, so-and-so is a fantastic, guide on this journey for this because of their experience doing that. So like one sentence about that. And then the third thing is that if, subscribe to this show and get this, the big payoff, right? So those are the 3 sentences that we like to put at the beginning, because that's mostly what everybody reads before they hit read more and you see the full description. So they're going to hit it right there. So this is our description exercise here at Podetize. We know this works. We know this is the most powerful thing that you can do. Upgrading your description is going to change the trajectory of your show instantly. When you fix this in your feed, you become more searchable by people who don't know you yet. And that makes you more discoverable as a podcast host. And it makes your show listenership grow faster.